Okay, now investing in C areas. There are investors who like each and every one of these grades. So there's people who will only do A properties and that's what they love and know. There are people who love B neighborhoods and they won't touch anything else. And there's people who love C neighborhoods. So let's talk about why they like it. Well, there's very little chance of appreciation, so they're not buying for that. But there is a chance for high cash flow if managed well. So most of the people I know who invest in C neighborhoods do it for the cash flow. They're like little cash cows because the values kind of never go up because these tend to be neighborhoods that, well, as we mentioned, they're very low income areas. So again, these are people working at the Targets and they have minimum wage jobs. And because they're minimum wage jobs, they have a lot of them. And oftentimes the people living in these homes just can't save a penny for the life of they just can't do it. And there's just too many bills and they're working too much and it can be difficult. So the chance of them ever buying and owning is pretty tough. So, there's not really a retail market for the C neighborhood, which means you're really going to be in areas where it's mostly renters, right? And when it's an area of mostly renters, the values are just kind of never going to go up. So the cash flow, on the other hand, the rents may go up. And they tend to be much higher than the value of the property. So again, tend to be a place for very high cash flow. You've got to increase your maintenance reserves in these C areas because these are not as nice homes and they might have old stuff in them that breaks. It is a little bit higher crime. There can be a lot higher crime areas where you might have your air conditioner unit stolen or anything stolen, lots of things stolen. So you've got to keep much higher maintenance reserves for these C areas. You need to have really good insurance too, because if your tenant does get robbed or, it can come back on the landlord. So you need good asset protection and good insurance for sure in these C neighborhoods. Vacancy reserves, you've got to increase that as well. You've got to count on there being more vacancies because unfortunately, the people that live and work in these areas, they have, again, they have the kind of jobs that they may move a lot. They may lose their job and have to transition and change neighborhoods. So there tends to be a lot more moving around. They're not going to stay as long necessarily. That's not always true at all. I mean, sometimes they'll stay forever if they're on Section 8 or they just have a steady job that they've had forever and then they're going to stay. Then you don't have to worry so much about that. But I still like having the vacancy reserve there because traditionally and historically, these C neighborhoods tend to be areas where people move more often. So the strategy number one is buy and hold for cash flow because it's not going to be an appreciation area. And you can accelerate that payoff with the extra cash flow. So if you get a loan on the property, you just take all that cash flow and you could pay it off. And like I said, now you got a little cash cow there paying you for the rest of your life. And the strategy number two is to lease option these to these folks. So again, let's say you've got this working family that is making minimum wage and just not getting ahead. And you say, well, listen, let's work out a lease option scenario where I'm going to help you buy this house. You got to clean up your credit. You've got to start saving. You've got to have, $2,000 to $5,000 to put down. But you keep working towards this and you're going to own this house. Now that's a total win-win because that tenant can now have the hope of home ownership over time. And you as the landlord can, number one, have done a good thing for somebody, but also have a tenant that stays there a long time and treats the property like it's their own. So you can put aside a little bit of the lease that they're paying to go towards their down payment. There's lots of ways that you can do the contract, but this is a very good way to help somebody and to help yourself. It's a win-win.